Our next story is about a new alliance, one that should not surprise you, but it should concern you, especially if you are watching us from India or the West. Why? Because the members of this new alliance are 1. China, 2. Iran, and 3. Moscow. We are calling this alliance CHIM. We took the liberty of naming this alliance because we are convinced that its members will never name their relationship. Forget that. They won't even acknowledge the alliance. But that's where we come in. Gravitas tells you stories which others won't. And tonight we will tell you about this new strategic map that is being drawn. This new strategic triangle. There are 3 big stories coming in from CHIM. 1. China is looking to triple its nuclear warheads. I repeat, triple. 2. China is building a railway line extremely close to the Indian border. The line connects Tibet to Xinjiang. It is also China's road to Gwadar. That brings me to development number 3. Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi is visiting China tomorrow, the 14th of February. This Valentine's Day, China and Iran are shoring up ties. What do countries separated by continents have to gain by coming together? And why do we think that CHIM, or China, Iran and Moscow, are coming closer? Let's start by answering the latter first. Here are some recent developments. In September, Iran signed a memorandum to join the SCO, or the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a body which often criticized as being nothing more than a talk shop for both China and Russia. And Iran is now its member. In November, the top Russian security officials visited Iran. Who were these officials? For one, Russia's National Security Chief and Russia's Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev, a man who is extremely close to none other than the Russian President Vladimir Putin himself. So why would Russia pack its National Security Chief along with one of Putin's closest allies to Iran when Russia is in the middle of a war? China happens to be unapologetic in its support of Russia's war. I mean, there are countries which have remained neutral and called for peace, like India. But China, the Wall Street Journal claims, is providing military aid to Russia. Who comes to your support in times of crisis? A true friend or a person with vested interests? So what does China qualify as in this case? China is a dear friend, at least that's what Putin wants the world to believe. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russia's Putin recently caught up over a phone call, and this was around New Year's Eve. The two sides released statements saying the ties are at their historic best. What's more, Putin said he's expecting a state visit from Xi Jinping soon. We are expecting you, dear friend. This was the message from Moscow. And then in December, China's Vice Premier Hu Shunhua flew down to Tehran. Now we also hear that Iran's president is visiting China. Raisi will be visiting Beijing from the 14th of February till the 16th. He will be meeting Xi. On the agenda is the shoring up of ties. So I ask, what's really cooking? CHIM, a new strategic alliance, and honestly it is not surprising. The 3 countries have quite a lot in common. For starters, the hatred for America. China and the United States are in this race for supremacy. Russia and the United States are still suffering from the Cold War hangover. The war in Ukraine has exacerbated the mutual hostility. And what about Iran? As we know, Iran and the US go back a long way. The story involves a hostage crisis, a failed nuclear deal, and sanctions. And it does not have a happy ending. Currently, Tehran is desperate to overcome the economic isolation from US sanctions. Then, there is common ideology. None of the countries are exactly fans of democracy. Iran is a theocracy. In Russia, President Putin is supreme. In China, well, no one really knows what's happening in China. It's not exactly communism, and it is far from socialism. Like I said, no one really knows what's happening in that country, except democracy isn't quite what's happening. So there you have 2 solid common grounds. The 3 almost look like natural allies, don't they? Is Chim a strategic alliance to neutralize the US? To some extent, yes. But we cannot limit Chim to just an anti-US group. There are other underlying interests that the alliance's partners are pursuing at the moment, both military and strategic. Iran, for example, is providing drones to Russia in its war against Ukraine. Iran and Russia are military allies in Syria. China is a major buyer of Iranian oil. In 2021, the two countries signed a 25-year strategic cooperation agreement. And then you have this report coming in from China about Beijing trying to boost its nuclear arsenal. The dream is to have 900 nuclear warheads by 2035. This is according to a PLA blueprint. Basically, China is trying to triple its nuclear arsenal, and who better to have in this journey than allies who have experience in nukes? Which now brings me to the most important question. Will India be a collateral damage in Chim? I wouldn't go so far as to say that. You see, India has historic ties with Russia. India and Iran also share a cordial relationship. China obviously is an exception. It never fails to provoke India. And as we speak, China is talking about building a railway line dangerously close to India. The line connects Shigatse in Tibet to Hotan in Xinjiang, and it cuts north through the Aksai Chin. The construction work will start soon. It is a 4,000-kilometer long line, and China is looking at a 2025 inauguration for the first phase. The line comes quite close to the LAC, or the line of actual control. The planned route passes through Rutog and around Pangong Lake. So that's a red line for India. Also, the line helps China mobilize troops to the border regions in no time. It is also China's road to Gwadar. You see, the CPEC, or the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, links Xinjiang to Gwadar. And this new line links Tibet to Xinjiang. So I ask again, should India be worried? You know about the railway line and Chim. Railway line, yes. Boosting nuclear arsenal, yes. But this new alliance, Chim, no. India should not worry about this alliance. I don't think the case of a rotten apple applies to the other alliance partners of Chim. You see, Russia and Iran would not join an alliance against India, and Chim is not about India. For now, it is solely America's headache. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.